The great crystal palace of Velthora gleamed under 3 purple suns. Princess Lirelei stood on her balcony looking out at the vast city below. Today was her 200th birthday, and according to ancient law, she had to choose a husband. The problem was that she did not want any of the boring noble males her father kept bringing to the palace. Lirelei had blue skin like all Zephyrians and could read minds when she touched someone. Her people lived for 800 years and thought they were the smartest beings in the galaxy. They had amazing technology and powerful weapons. Most other alien races feared them or wanted to be their friends. But Lirelei was tired of her own people. They never surprised her. They always did exactly what she expected them to do. Even their thoughts were predictable and dull. She wanted something different. She wanted excitement and mystery. The princess walked back into her room, where her 2 older sisters were waiting. Princess Viridian had green eyes that always looked angry. Princess Celestine was the oldest and thought she was the most beautiful female in the empire. Both sisters hated that their younger sister might choose a husband before them. So little. Sister, said Viridian with a mean smile. Have you picked one of father's boring choices yet? Father says you must decide today, added Celestine. The law is very clear about this. Lirelei looked at both her sisters and smiled. She had been thinking about this moment for months. She had studied many different alien races, and found one that fascinated her more than any other. They were called humans, and they came from a small blue planet called Earth. I have made my choice, said Lirelei quietly. Good, said Viridian. Which noble house will you honor with your selection? I will not marry anyone from a noble house, replied the princess. I will only accept a human male as my husband. Both sisters stared at her with shock. Celestine dropped the golden cup she was holding. Viridian's mouth fell open, and she could not speak for several seconds. A human, whispered Celestine. You want to marry one of those primitive creatures? They barely know how to fly between stars, added Viridian. They only learned faster than light travel 50 years ago. They are like children compared to us. Lirelei had expected this reaction. They are not primitive. They are different. They think in ways we cannot predict. They solve problems we would never imagine. They are brave and creative, and I find them very interesting. Father will never allow this, said Celestine. The law says I can choose any male I want, replied Lirelei. It does not say he must be Zephyrian. The news of Princess Lirelei's decision spread through the palace like fire. Servants whispered about it in the corridors. Guards talked about it while they stood watch. Noble families sent angry messages to the emperor, demanding that he stop this madness. Emperor Xanther was a wise ruler who had kept peace in the galaxy for 300 years. When his advisors told him what his daughter wanted, he sat quietly in his throne room for a long time. Finally, he called for the human ambassador. Ambassador Lisa Grant had been on Velthora for 2 years. She was a smart woman who had learned to speak the Zephyrian language perfectly. When she entered the throne room, she bowed respectfully to the emperor. Your daughter has made an unusual request, said the emperor. So, I have heard your majesty, replied Lisa. What would you like Earth to do? Send us your finest human males, said the emperor. 5 of them. They will compete for my daughter's hand in the traditional trials. If none of them can pass the tests, then this foolish idea will end. Lisa knew that the Zephyrian trials were designed to be nearly impossible for anyone who was not Zephyrian. But she also knew that refusing the Emperor's request would damage the alliance between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. That alliance was too important to lose. We will send our best people, Your Majesty, she said. 3 days later, the message reached Earth. Captain Jake Harrison was eating lunch on his ship when the call came through. Jake was 32 years old and commanded the diplomatic vessel Aurora's Dream. He had short brown hair and green eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something serious. Captain Harrison, said Admiral Kate Wilson through the communication system, you need to come to Earth immediately. We have a special mission for you. Jake had been expecting a normal cargo run to one of the outer colonies. This sounded much more complicated. "What kind of mission, Admiral?" "The kind that could change the future of humanity," replied the Admiral. "Pack your dress uniform." 2 days later, Jake stood in a briefing room on Earth with 4 other men. Dr. Alex Murphy was a scientist who studied alien biology. He was tall and thin with black hair and always carried a computer tablet. Lieutenant Ben Torres was a soldier with muscles like steel and scars on his hands from many battles. Professor Sam Collins taught alien cultures at the university and spoke 12 different languages. Engineer Ryan Blake could fix any machine ever built and had oil stains on his fingers. Admiral Wilson stood at the front of the room with a serious expression. "Gentlemen, you have been selected for the most important diplomatic mission in human history. The Zephyrian princess wants to marry a human male. You 5 will compete for that honor." "With respect, Admiral," said Jake, "none of us volunteered for this." "The future of the human race may depend on this alliance," replied the Admiral. "The Zephyrian Empire controls half the galaxy. If we can become part of their royal family, we will have protection and opportunities beyond anything we have ever imagined." Dr. Murphy raised his hand. "What exactly do we have to do?" "You will face the trials of Zethary," said the Admiral. "Ancient tests that prove worthiness to marry into the royal family. No alien has ever passed these trials." "What happens if we fail?" asked Ben Torres. "Then humanity remains a small player in galactic politics," replied the Admiral. "And we hope the Zephyrians still want to be our friends." The 5 men looked at each other. None of them had asked for this responsibility, but they all understood what was at stake. The survival and future of their entire species might depend on what they did in the next few weeks. Jake Harrison stared out the window at Earth below. In 2 days, they would travel to Velthora and face trials designed by aliens who thought humans were too primitive to succeed. But Jake had spent his whole life proving that humans could do the impossible when they had to. He just hoped that would be enough. The Aurora's Dream landed on Velthera's main spaceport, under a sky filled with floating buildings and flying vehicles. Jake Harrison stepped off the ship with the other 4 human candidates, and immediately felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching them. Zephyrians gathered around the landing area, pointing and whispering about the strange visitors from Earth. "They are smaller than I expected," said one Zephyrian noble to another. "Look how short their lives must be," replied his companion. "You can see it in their faces." Jake ignored the comments and focused on the magnificent city before them. Velthera was unlike anything on Earth. Crystal towers reached toward the clouds, and bridges made of light connected different sections of the city. The air smelled like flowers and metal, and something else he could not identify. A group of royal guards approached them. The leader was a tall female, Zephyrian with silver armor and a sword that glowed with blue energy. "I am Commander Ne. You will follow me to the palace. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch anything unless given permission." The humans were taken through the city in a vehicle that floated above the ground. Citizens stopped their activities to stare at the strange procession. Some Zephyrians looked curious, but most seemed either amused or disgusted by the sight of humans in their capital. The Crystal Palace was even more impressive up close. It was carved from a single enormous gem that reflected light and patterns that hurt to look at directly. Guards stood at every entrance, wearing armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal. Everything about the place said power and wealth beyond human imagination. Inside the palace, the humans were brought to a large hall where Princess Lyrile waited for them. Jake had seen pictures of Zephyrians before, but meeting one in person was different. The princess was beautiful in an alien way that made his mind work hard to understand what he was seeing. Her blue skin seemed to glow softly, and her silver hair moved like it was underwater, even though there was no wind. "Welcome to Velthora," said the princess in perfect English. "I am honored that Earth has sent such distinguished representatives." Dr. Murphy stepped forward and bowed. "Your Highness, we are honored to be here." "You will rest tonight," said Princess Lirelei. "Tomorrow, the trials begin. I should warn you that these tests were created for Zephyrian nobles. They are designed to push our people to their limits. No alien has ever completed them successfully." "Your Highness," said Jake, "may I ask why you want to marry a human?" The princess smiled, and Jake noticed that her teeth were slightly pointed. "That is an excellent question, Captain Harrison. Perhaps you will understand the answer after you face the trials." That night the humans were given rooms in the palace guest quarters. The beds were too long, and the gravity felt slightly wrong, but they managed to sleep. Jake woke up early and found Ben Torres already awake and doing exercises in his room. "Nervous?" asked Jake. "Always," replied Ben. "But nervous keeps you alive in my experience. Any ideas about what we are going to face today?" Ben stopped his push-ups and looked serious. "I have been thinking about that. These trials were made for aliens who can read minds and live for 800 years. We are going to have to think different than they expect." The first trial was called the Test of Mind. The humans were taken to a circular room with walls covered in strange symbols. In the center was a chair that looked like it was made of glass and electricity. Princess Lirelei explained the rules, while her sisters watched from a balcony above. "One at a time you will sit in the chair," said the princess. "Zephyrian science will create a mental maze in your mind. You must find the exit while they try to confuse and distract you. Most of our own people need several hours to complete this test." Professor Collins went first. He was smart and knew a lot about alien cultures, but within 10 minutes he was shaking and sweating. The Zephyrian science were attacking his mind with images and sounds that made no sense. He lasted 15 minutes before giving up. Ryan Blake tried next. He approached the problem like an engineering challenge and tried to build mental shields around his thoughts. The science broke through his defenses easily, and he surrendered after 12 minutes. Dr. Murphy used his scientific training to analyze the mental attacks as they happened. He made notes in his head about the patterns he noticed, but the constant pressure was too much. He lasted 18 minutes before admitting defeat. Ben Torres sat in the chair like he was going into battle. He had been trained to resist interrogation and torture, so he knew how to separate his mind from pain and confusion. The science hit him with everything they had, but he kept moving forward through the mental maze step by step. After 30 minutes, he found the exit. The Zephyrian nobles in the watching area murmured with surprise. No alien had ever completed the test so quickly. Princess Viridian leaned forward with a frown. This was not supposed to happen. Finally, it was Jake's turn. He sat in the chair and felt the Zephyrian scions entering his mind like cold fingers. They began creating the maze around his thoughts and filling it with distractions and false paths. But Jake had spent years commanding a ship where making the wrong decision could kill everyone under his command. He had learned to trust his instincts, even when everything seemed impossible. Instead of fighting the scions, Jake relaxed and let their attacks flow around him. He stopped trying to understand the maze and started feeling his way through it. When the scions sent him false images, he ignored them. When they tried to confuse him with multiple paths, he chose the one that felt right, without thinking about why. The watching Zephyrians grew quiet as Jake moved through the mental maze faster than anyone had ever seen. He was not using telepathic powers or advanced mental techniques. He was simply refusing to overthink the problem. Within 15 minutes, he reached the exit. Princess Lirelei stood up from her throne with excitement. "Incredible. Captain Harrison has set a new record for the test of mind." Her sisters looked angry and confused. This was not going according to their plan. Princess Viridian whispered something to one of her servants, who nodded and disappeared. The second trial was the test of knowledge. The remaining candidates had to answer questions about galactic history, science, and culture. Dr. Murphy excelled at this challenge because he had spent his career studying alien civilizations. He answered questions about ancient wars and extinct species that impressed even the Zephyrian scholars. Ben Torres surprised everyone by knowing details about military tactics used by different alien races. Jake used his experience as a ship captain to answer questions about space navigation and trade routes. Both men passed the test, but barely. The third trial was physical combat. Each human had to fight a Zephyrian warrior in single combat. The aliens were stronger and faster than humans, but Ben Torres had been fighting all his life. He used techniques the Zephyrians had never seen before, and managed to defeat his opponent through pure determination and unexpected moves. Jake faced a warrior who was twice his size and had 4 arms. Everyone expected the human to lose quickly, but Jake had learned to fight dirty during his years exploring dangerous planets. He used the Zephyrian's size against him and won through speed and cleverness rather than strength. By the end of the day, only Jake and Dr. Murphy remained as candidates. 3 humans had been eliminated, but 2 had survived trials that were supposed to be impossible for their species. Princess Lirelei watched them with growing fascination, while her sisters plotted in the shadows. The real tests were just beginning. Princess Lirelei requested private meetings with the 2 remaining human candidates. This was unusual, because royal customs did not normally allow such personal contact during the trials. The noble families whispered their disapproval, but could not stop her, because she was following the ancient laws correctly. Jake Harrison was called to meet the princess in her private garden. The space was filled with plants from dozens of different worlds, creating colors and smells that made his head spin. Princess Lirelei sat beside a fountain that played music as the water fell. She wore a simple dress instead of her formal robes, and looked younger than Jake had expected. "Please sit, Captain Harrison," she said, pointing to a chair made from what looked like living wood. "I want to talk to you honestly about why I made this choice." Jake sat down carefully. The chair adjusted itself to fit his human body, which was both helpful and disturbing. "Your Highness, I have to admit that most humans are confused by your decision. We know we are not the most advanced species in the galaxy." The princess smiled, and her pointed teeth flashed in the alien sunlight. "That is exactly why I chose your people. My species has become too comfortable with our own superiority. We have had the same technology for thousands of years. We solve problems the same way our ancestors did. We have stopped growing and learning." "But you rule half the galaxy," said Jake. "Your empire is the most powerful force known to exist. Power without growth is just waiting to die," replied Princess Lirelei. "I have studied human history extensively, Captain Harrison. Your people have existed for a tiny fraction of the time. My people have, but you have accomplished things that amaze me. You went from riding animals to flying between stars in less than 10,000 years. Jake thought about this. Humans did tend to change and adapt quickly, compared to longer-lived species. What does this have to do with marriage, Your Highness? My empire faces a threat that our traditional thinking cannot solve, said the princess. There is an enemy attacking our outer colonies. We call them the Shadow Fleet because they appear without warning and disappear just as quickly. Our military leaders cannot predict their movements or counter their strategies. What makes them so dangerous? Princess Lirelei stood up and walked to the fountain. They think like we used to think before we became set in our ways. They are unpredictable and creative, and willing to take risks that seem foolish until they succeed. They remind me of humans. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You think humans could help fight them? I think human ways of thinking could help us become stronger, said the princess. Not just in war, but in everything we do. Your people see solutions where we see only problems. You take chances that terrify us. You adapt to situations that would paralyze most other species. And you think marrying a human would somehow transfer these qualities to your people. The princess turned back to him with excitement in her silver eyes. I think it would be a beginning, a symbol that change is possible. A way to start learning from each other, instead of just ruling over everyone else. Jake was quiet for several minutes, thinking about what she had said. Your Highness, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you actually want to marry a human, or do you just want to use one for political purposes? Princess Lirelei laughed, and the sound was like bells ringing. Captain Harrison, you have just asked the most important question anyone has asked me in 200 years. The answer is both. I need a political alliance, but I also want someone who will challenge me and surprise me and make me think about things in new ways. And you think I could do that? I think you already have. Later that day, Dr. Alex Murphy had his meeting with the princess. He was nervous and excited at the same time, because he had dreamed of studying Zephyrian culture his entire career. The princess met him in the royal library, which contained books and data crystals from across the galaxy. Dr. Murphy, said the princess, I understand you are an expert on alien biology. I study how different species adapt to their environments, Your Highness, replied Alex. It has always fascinated me how life finds ways to survive and thrive, under any conditions. That is precisely why I wanted to speak with you, said the princess. I have discovered something in our archives that I think you should see. She led him to a section of the library that was clearly very old. The data crystals here were different colors and shapes than the newer ones. Princess Lirelei activated one of them, and a holographic display appeared, showing star maps and battle reports. These records are from 3,000 years ago, said the princess. They tell the story of a Zephyrian colony that was exiled from the Empire for crimes against the royal family. Alex studied the information carefully. What happened to them? They disappeared into the dark regions of space, and we assumed they had died out, said the princess. But I believe they are the shadow fleet that is attacking us now. After 3,000 years, asked Alex. That seems unlikely. Not if they found ways to extend their natural lifespans, or if they have been breeding and planning for revenge all this time, replied the princess. Look at these battle reports from our recent encounters with the Shadow Fleet. She activated another crystal, and Alex saw tactical analyses of the mysterious attacks. His scientific mind immediately began looking for patterns and connections. After studying the data for an hour, he looked up with a shocked expression. The attack patterns are definitely Zephyrian in origin, he said, but they have been modified and improved. Someone has taken your military doctrine and made it better. Exactly, said the princess. They know how we think and how we fight, because they used to be us. That is why our traditional strategies keep failing. We are fighting an enemy that knows all our weaknesses. But why are you telling me this? Asked Alex. Because I think human scientific methods could help us understand our enemy better, said the princess. Your people study problems by gathering data and testing theories. You change your approaches when the evidence shows you are wrong. My people tend to stick with methods that worked before, even when they stop working. Alex felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You want me to help analyze this shadow fleet? I want you to help my people learn how to think like scientists instead of just warriors, said the princess. I want you to teach us to adapt and evolve the way humans do. That evening, Jake and Alex met in Jake's room to discuss their conversations with the princess. Both men were struggling to understand the full implications of what they had learned. She is not just looking for a husband, said Alex. She is trying to save her entire civilization, and she thinks humans are the key to doing that, added Jake. The question is whether we are actually capable of helping, or if we are just going to disappoint her. The Shadow Fleet sounds like a serious threat, said Alex. If they really are exiled Zephyrians, who have spent 3,000 years planning revenge, then this empire could be in real danger. Jake stared out the window at the alien city below. Which means this marriage is not just about diplomacy anymore. It could be about survival for both our species. No pressure, said Alex with a weak smile. None at all, replied Jake. Both men knew that tomorrow would bring the final trials, and one of them would be chosen to marry Princess Lyra. But they also knew that whoever was selected would be taking on responsibilities far beyond anything they had imagined when they left Earth. The future of two civilizations might depend on whether a human could help an ancient alien empire learn to think in new ways. Outside their window, the three purple suns of Velthora set behind the crystal towers, creating patterns of light that no human eyes had ever seen before. Change was coming whether anyone was ready for it or not. The night before the final ceremony, Princess Viridian and Princess Celestine met in secret with several powerful noble families. The room was hidden deep beneath the palace, where even the Emperor's spies could not hear them. 20 of the most influential Zephyrians in the Empire gathered around a table made of black stone. "This madness must end," said Princess Viridian, with anger in her voice. "Our sister is about to disgrace the royal bloodline by marrying a primitive alien. The humans have passed trials that should have been impossible for them," added Lord Craxus, who commanded the Imperial fleet. "This suggests they are more dangerous than we believed." Princess Celestine leaned forward with cold eyes. "If Lirelei marries one of these creatures, she will produce heirs that are half human. Those children could claim the throne someday. We cannot allow alien blood to contaminate the royal family." "What do you propose?" asked Lady Viridian, who controlled the largest banking houses in the Empire. "We remove Lirelei from the succession before she can make this terrible mistake," said Princess Viridian. "Father has grown weak in his old age. He should abdicate and name me as his heir. And if he refuses," asked another noble, "then we help him make the right decision," replied Princess Celestine, with a smile that showed her pointed teeth. The conspirators spent hours planning their coup. They would strike during the final ceremony, when security would be focused on the wedding preparations. Teams of loyal soldiers would secure key points throughout the palace, while assassins eliminated Princess Lirelei and the human candidates. The Emperor would be forced to name Viridian as his successor, or face a civil war that would destroy the Empire. What they did not know was that Princess Lirelei had been expecting this betrayal for weeks. She had noticed the secret meetings and whispered conversations among the noble families. Her personal guard commander, Nixira, had been watching the conspirators and preparing for their attack. Jake Harrison could not sleep that night. He walked through the palace gardens trying to calm his mind before the final trial. Tomorrow, Princess Lirelei would choose between him and Dr. Murphy. Both men had proven themselves worthy, according to the ancient tests. But only one could become her husband. As Jake walked past a fountain, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see 3 Zephyrian soldiers approaching with weapons drawn. Their faces were covered, but he could see hatred in their eyes. "You do not belong here, human," said the leader in accented English. "Your kind should never have been allowed on our world." Jake raised his hands peacefully. "I am a guest of your princess. Attacking me would violate your own laws of hospitality." "The princess has lost her mind," replied another soldier. "We are here to restore sanity to the royal family." The first assassin lunged forward with a blade that glowed with energy. Jake dodged to the side and grabbed a heavy stone from the garden path. He threw it with perfect accuracy, hitting the attacker in the head and dropping him instantly. The other 2 soldiers charged together, expecting an easy victory over a primitive human. But Jake had been fighting for survival since he was old enough to walk. He used the fountain as cover and picked up the fallen soldier's weapon. The energy blade felt strange in his hands, but he adapted quickly to its weight and balance. Within minutes, both remaining assassins were unconscious on the ground. At the same time, Dr. Alex Murphy was attacked in his room by 2 more soldiers. Alex was not a fighter, but he was smart and had studied Zephyrian technology extensively. He managed to activate the room's security system and trap his attackers with an energy field until help arrived. Throughout the palace, Similar attacks were happening as Princess Viridian's forces tried to eliminate everyone who supported Princess Liralay's marriage plans. But Commander Nexira had prepared well for this night. Her loyal guards fought back against the conspirators with determination and skill. The battle raged through the crystal corridors for hours. Alien weapons fired, beams of light that cut through stone and metal. Soldiers in liquid armor fought hand-to-hand with rebels who wanted to preserve the old ways. The beautiful palace became a war zone as two different visions of the future clashed violently. Princess Liralay herself fought alongside her guards, using skills that surprised everyone who saw her. She had been secretly training with human military advisors for months and had learned their philosophy of leading from the front instead of commanding from safety. Her energy sword cut through enemy ranks as she personally led the charge to retake the throne room. Jake found himself fighting beside Zephyrian soldiers who had initially looked down on him as primitive. His human tactics confused the attackers who expected traditional Zephyrian combat techniques. He used furniture as weapons and turned decorative items into tools of war. His creativity and willingness to break conventional rules made him unexpectedly effective in the chaotic battle. "The human fights like a wild animal," shouted one of the attacking soldiers. "No," replied Commander Nexira, as she cut down an enemy warrior. "He fights like someone who refuses to lose." Dr. Murphy used his scientific knowledge to turn the palace's own systems against the attackers. He reprogrammed security protocols and environmental controls in ways the Zephyrian engineers had never considered. Gravity fields reversed unexpectedly. Lights became blinding weapons. The very walls of the palace seemed to fight against the conspirators. By dawn, the coup attempt had failed completely. Princess Viridian and most of her supporters were captured or dead. Princess Celestine had escaped, but her power base was destroyed. The surviving conspirators would face exile or execution for treason against the royal family. Emperor Santher stood in his damaged throne room, looking older than his 800 years. The attack had shaken his faith in his own people and showed him how much hatred existed toward his daughter's choices. "Father," said Princess Liralay as she approached with her energy sword still glowing. "The threat is over, but many of the conspirators escaped. They will likely join the Shadow Fleet and make our external enemies even stronger." The Emperor nodded sadly. "I should have seen this coming. I should have protected you better." "You could not have prevented this," replied his daughter. "Some of our people will never accept change, no matter how necessary it becomes." Jake and Alex stood nearby, watching the royal family deal with the aftermath of betrayal. Both humans were covered in dirt and alien blood, but they had survived their first real test of combat alongside their potential new allies. "Well," said Alex quietly, "I guess we know what we are getting ourselves into if we stay here. Political intrigue, assassination attempts, and fighting for our lives," replied Jake. "Sounds like a normal Tuesday for a human diplomat." "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" asked Alex. "The princess is offering you a chance to help save her civilization, but it could get you killed in the process." Jake looked at Princess Liralay as she comforted her father and organized the palace defenses. She had fought like a warrior and led like a queen. She had chosen humans, not because she needed protection, but because she wanted partners who could help her face impossible challenges. "Someone has to help them learn to adapt," said Jake. "And humans are pretty good at surviving impossible situations." "That we are," agreed Alex with a tired smile. The final ceremony would take place in a few hours, despite the night's violence. Princess Liralay would choose her husband and begin the process of changing her empire forever. The real work was just beginning, for everyone involved. The final ceremony took place in the Great Hall of the Crystal Palace, despite the damage from the night's battle. Hundreds of Zephyria nobles filled the space, along with representatives from dozens of alien species who had come to witness this historic moment. The air hummed with tension and excitement as everyone waited to see which human Princess Liralay would choose. Jake Harrison, and Dr. Alex Murphy, stood before the princess, wearing the formal clothes that had been prepared for them. Both men looked tired from the fighting but determined to see this through to the end. Princess Lirelei wore a dress made from fabric that seemed to capture starlight, and her silver hair was decorated with gems from across the galaxy. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," announced Princess Lirelei, in a voice that carried to every corner of the hall. "Last night, enemies of progress tried to stop this ceremony through violence and betrayal. They failed because the future cannot be stopped by those who fear change." The crowd murmured with approval. Many of the nobles had been shocked by the coup attempt and were now more willing to support their princess than they had been before. "I have chosen to marry a human male not to insult our traditions but to honor them," continued the princess. "Our ancestors built this empire by being bold and willing to try new approaches. It is time for us to remember that courage." Emperor Xanther stepped forward, looking proud of his daughter, despite his exhaustion. "Princess Lirelei has proven her wisdom through these trials. Her choice will bind our empire to humanity and create new possibilities for both our peoples." Princess Lirelei walked toward the two human candidates. Both Jake and Alex stood straighter, knowing that this moment would change their lives forever. The princess stopped in front of them and spoke in a voice only they could hear. "Dr. Murphy, you have shown me that human scientific thinking could help my people understand our enemies better," she said quietly. "I want you to stay on Vel as my chief advisor for research and development. Help us learn to think like scientists instead of just warriors." Alex bowed deeply. "It would be my honor, Your Highness." Then Princess Lirelei turned to Jake. "Captain Harrison, you have shown me that human leadership could help my people adapt to any challenge. Will you stand beside me as my husband and help me guide this empire into the future?" Jake looked into her silver eyes and saw not just a beautiful alien princess but a leader who was willing to risk everything to save her people. "Your Highness, it would be my privilege to serve alongside you." The princess smiled and took his hand. "Then, by the ancient laws of succession, I choose Captain Jake Harrison as my consort and future emperor of the Zephyrian Empire, the Great." Hall erupted with cheers and applause. Some of the noise came from genuine celebration, but much of it was simply relief that the political crisis was over. Representatives from Earth who had traveled to witness the ceremony looked amazed that their species had just gained a foothold in the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The wedding ceremony itself was a blend of human and Zephyrian traditions. Jake and Princess Lirelei exchanged vows in both English and the ancient Zephyrian royal language. They shared water from Earth and soil from Velthera, symbolizing the union of their two worlds. When they kissed to seal their marriage, the energy created a brief flash of light that some witnesses swore they could feel in their minds. After the ceremony, Jake found himself wearing clothes made from materials that cost more than most starships. Princess Lirelei had become Queen Lirelei when her father formally abdicated in her favor. Jake was now technically an emperor, though he felt more like a ship captain who had gotten lost and ended up in charge of half the galaxy. "How are you feeling, Emperor Harrison?" asked Dr. Murphy with a grin. "Like I should be commanding a cargo ship instead of an empire," replied Jake. "But I guess humans adapt to whatever situation they find themselves in." The celebration continued for 3 days, but Jake and his new wife had work to do. The Shadow Fleet had used the confusion of the coup attempt to launch new attacks on outer colonies. 3 entire star systems had gone silent, and rescue fleets were reporting strange energy signatures at the attack sites. Queen Lirelei brought Jake to the military command center, where Zephyrian admirals were studying tactical displays with frustrated expressions. The enemy continued to appear without warning, strike with devastating effectiveness, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. "Show Emperor Harrison the attack patterns," ordered the Queen. Admiral Caraxus activated a holographic display showing the recent strikes. "Your Majesty, the enemy seems to know exactly where we will send our fleets and how we will respond to their attacks. They are always one step ahead of our strategies." Jake studied the information for several minutes. His human mind approached the problem differently than the Zephyrian military leaders. Where they saw confusing randomness, he began to notice subtle patterns and connections. "They are not trying to conquer territory," said Jake finally. "They are trying to make you react in specific ways. Look at these attack locations. Each one forces you to move fleets away from more important targets." "What do you mean?" asked Admiral Caraxes. "They are hurting you," replied Jake, "like a hunter driving prey toward a trap. The question is, what are they trying to get you to do?" Queen Lirelei activated another display, showing fleet positions across the Empire. "Our forces are spread thin, trying to respond to all these attacks. We have had to pull ships away from our core systems to protect the colonies." Jake felt a chill as he realized what was happening. "They are not trying to destroy your colonies. They are trying to get you to leave your capital undefended." "Velthora has the strongest defenses in the galaxy," said Admiral Coraxus. "No enemy could threaten our home system." "No outside enemy," agreed Jake. "But what about an enemy that knows all your defensive codes and procedures? An enemy that used to be part of your empire?" The realization hit everyone in the room at the same time. The Shadow Fleet was not planning to attack Velthora from outside. They were planning to strike from within, using knowledge and access that only former Zephyrians would possess. "Send emergency recall orders to all fleets," commanded Queen Lirelei. "Bring them back to defend the capital immediately." "Your Majesty, that will leave the colonies completely unprotected," protested Admiral Coraxus. "The colonies cannot be saved if the Empire falls," replied the Queen. "Captain Harrison is correct. We have been reacting exactly as our enemies wanted us to." The next few hours were chaotic as the Zephyrian military tried to reorganize their forces for a completely different kind of battle. Jake worked with Dr. Murphy to analyze the Shadow Fleet's technology and tactics, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. "They have been planning this for 3,000 years, said Alex as he studied captured enemy equipment. "Their technology is definitely based on Zephyrian designs, but it has been improved in ways that should not be possible." "How so?" asked Jake. "They seem to have solved problems that your wife's scientists are still working on," replied Alex. "Better shields, more efficient weapons, improved faster than light drives. It is like they had access to research data from the future." Jake thought about this puzzle until a terrible possibility occurred to him. What if they are not just exiled Zephyrians? What if some of them never left the Empire at all? "You think there are still conspirators inside the government?" asked Alex. "I think there have been conspirators inside the government for 3,000 years, replied Jake, feeding information to the Shadow Fleet and helping them stay ahead of Imperial defenses. This theory proved correct when the Shadow Fleet finally revealed itself. Instead of attacking from space, they emerged from hidden bases inside the Velthora system itself. Sleeper agents activated secret weapons and sabotaged critical systems while enemy ships materialized near the capital using technology that had been stolen over centuries of patient infiltration. The battle for Velthia tested everything that Jake and Queen Lirelei had learned about combining human and Zephyrian approaches to warfare. Traditional tactics failed against enemies who knew every standard response, but human creativity and adaptability proved effective against even the most prepared opponents. Jake commanded mixed human and Zephyrian units that used unpredictable strategies and unconventional weapons. His willingness to take calculated risks and change plans in the middle of battle confused enemies who expected rigid military doctrine. Queen Lirelei used her telepathic abilities to coordinate with human commanders who thought in ways that could not be predicted or intercepted. The final confrontation took place in orbit around Velthora, as hundreds of ships fought among the crystal satellites and orbital cities. The Shadow Fleet had superior technology and the advantage of surprise, but they had not counted on facing an enemy that refused to follow established patterns. In the end, it was human stubbornness that won the day. Jake's forces took losses that would have caused any sensible commander to retreat, but humans had never been particularly sensible. When their survival was at stake, they kept fighting when logic said they should surrender, and found ways to win battles that should have been impossible. When the last Shadow Fleet ship was destroyed or captured, Queen Lirelei and Emperor Jake stood together on the bridge of their flagship looking out at the debris-filled space around their capital. Both of them were exhausted but alive, and their empire was safe for the first time in generations. "So," said Jake with a tired smile, "what do we do now?" "Now we rebuild," replied his wife. "And we make sure this never happens again by learning from both our peoples. Humans will help us stay flexible and creative, while Zephyrians will help you think about long-term consequences." "Sounds like a fair trade," agreed Jake. Reports were already coming in from across the galaxy. Other alien civilizations had heard about the battle and were requesting human advisors to help them solve their own problems. Humanity's reputation for adaptability and determination was spreading faster than any human ship could travel. Jake Harrison had left Earth expecting to compete for an alien princess's hand in marriage. Instead, he had helped save a galactic empire and established humanity as a major power in the galaxy. Not bad for a cargo ship captain who had never asked for any of this responsibility. But then again, humans had always been good at exceeding expectations when the universe gave them no other choice.